Are you waiting for me to say the key word? Huh?
It's all right. We can do a different routine if you like, Craig. I can recover my self-confidence. Whoops. Can you just chat
Sure,
for about 10
sure.
minutes?
All right, so let's go to the chat room real
So,
quick. And let me know if we have a 5x5. David's on the line. He had a call just come in, but he'll be with us shortly. Today's show is titled John Hanoi John Kerry. Let's see here. All right. James Ken, been a long time. I like your new image in there of Putin. Um, Doug M.
I'm back.
Benrich. Oh, fantastic. So I put today's show, I titled it John Hanoi John Kerry. Now, I just sent you an email. Um, and we were talking about Fulbright and the Vietnam War, but you also know that Karl Marcy was a key aide on the Foreign Senate Committee, and those two were joined at the hip. And of course, Karl Marcy had a son who happened to marry Field's sister, Christine. So, anyhow, with that said, what would you like to talk about today?
Well, my apologies first. I have to finish it in an hour because I've got something very, very crucial.
Okay.
So my apologies to the chat room and but maybe there'll be people who want to pick up what we discussed in the next 50 minutes.
Sounds good.
Okay, now something totally dramatic. So this is hot from the press. It turns out that John Hanoi Kerry, and of course there's a famous woman called Hanoi Jane, right? In 1970, he went to Paris. He's a Navy reservist, and without the permission of the American government or the authority of the government, he sat down with the North Vietnamese communists and began negotiating how to get the war terminated, get the United States military forces out of South Vietnam, and leave he and his communist friends to deal justice. And I figure they killed about 250,000 Catholics and senior military people in the South Vietnam, and convert the whole of the Vietnam to the communist mode, right? Which is kind of interesting because the guy should have been brought back to the United States and shot, right?
Right.
Okay, we need to get back to basics because America seems to have lost its way, and I'm not sure I can help find it. But this is the way to treat traitors, right? So Jane Fonda got the nickname Hanoi Jane, and I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that Americans understand that John Kerry is Hanoi John. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, now he did something else in 1970, which is very interesting. He attended, and given that he seems to be able to negotiate the withdrawal of the United States of America from its allies, leaving them to the mercy of the enemies and the communists, he's quite an influential character, even though he's a prick. Is that
Well, you're being kind to pricks. I mean, that's kind of a.
right? Anyway, well, he attended the first, wait for it, Craig, Earth Day conference. Now, I don't know what Americans think about Earth Day, but it's an annual event, I think it's the 22nd, where they've mobilized the turkeys to applaud Christmas. Because what Earth Day is about is deindustrializing the West on the basis that any industrial activity of the West is leading to catastrophic damage to the planet on which we live, notwithstanding that it's industrialization and the advance of technology that has made us much more efficient users of power, raw power, whether it's buried in the ground, nuclear, sorry, whether it's gas or coal, but nuclear. So if you look at the countries that are in the process of developing and have this incredible gap between the very rich and the poor, such as Russia and China, they are, from an environmental point of view, a pathetic mess, right?
Yes.
So instead of celebrating what we, and I don't pull my stripes very often, but people like me who are engineers or scientists, whatever you like to call it, when challenged with an environmental hazard, we fix it. These guys talk about it. And then they extract from the people who are fixing it, the intellectual property. They sell it, peddle it internationally, and then they subsidize their friends, which I find despicable. But there's a more sinister theory behind Earth Day. That is, that the population of the Earth, and this is Malthusianism, if you care to call it, or eugenics, the population of the Earth needs to be substantially reduced from 6 billion to 500 million. And the guy who drove that was one Maurice Strong, and now it appears his aide, significantly younger, was Hanoi John. Does that make sense?
Yes. Are you saying directly was his aide or subversively?
No, indirectly, using
indirectly.
the internet. The beauty of community. The first virtual network in the world, in my opinion, my humble opinion, or my not so humble opinion, because Field's not here, right? Although he might be listening, was the invention of the telegraph system. And back then, I think in the 1840s or so, there was a guy called Morse and his equivalents in the United Kingdom, Wheatstone and people like that. Wheatstone, incidentally, invented the encryption system. I think they call it the Playfair, but he didn't give his name to it. It was actually Lord Playfair up in Aberdeen or Edinburgh University that I think taught the Prince of Wales back then, who became Edward VII, but that's by the by. Telegraph, the cable telegraph, first virtual intelligence system or virtual brain, and that's fascinatingly enough, Craig, the name they gave to the instrument room at the General Post Office in London, where the cable from all over the world, and eventually, I think in 1864, they laid a couple of trial attempts between the United Kingdom and the United States, and when that was eventually laid and active, around the time of Abraham Lincoln's assassination, they were able to synchronize the clocks in the United States, America, and the United Kingdom to within 2 milliseconds. How big is a millisecond? Well, it's 1,000th of a second, so it's 2,000ths of a second. And fast forward to 1962, with the launch of Telstar.
Yeah, I knew that.
I
knew that was coming. I do pay attention. Yes, I do see a pattern.
Where I'm going here?
Yes, I do.
Right. So the first paragraph, and because I'm so rushed, I haven't got it out in time, but I've sort of got something that looked like the first paragraph of the next post. Follows. Abel Danger asserts that Hanoi John Kerry began using friend/tracking systems after the first Earth Day in 1970, and that he deploys 9 eyes, that's 5 eyes plus BRIC, and BRIC stands for Brazil, Russia, India, and China surveillance systems to coordinate death pools at mass casualty events. Now, if this sounds sinister, it most certainly is, because these people can arrange mass casualty events all the way up to genocides, right? But they have access to the most powerful communication systems in the world that gives them the opportunity for real-time manipulation of the crime scenes and the time at those crime scenes, or the perception of the time at those crime scenes. And of course, they were manipulating the times at the crime scene on 911 outside the Pentagon, right?
Correct.
There is an image, 4 frames of a camera that catches that up and down bar, whatever you call it, as cars drive into the parquet in the Pentagon. And it catches 4 frames, and I think Americans should say, well, where are the other frames? Or where are the reels from the cameras, closed-circuit television cameras, which surrounded the Pentagon and would have captured thousands, if not millions, of images, right?
Correct.
We only get to see 4. So we can see something, or we think we can see something crossing the Pentagon lawn, all right? I don't think anyone I know says that what they see is a large Boeing passenger jet. Many people, including Field, think that we're looking at maybe an A3 Sky Warrior launched from a nearby aircraft carrier, which is quite amazing, given what the public believe happened on 911. But one of the most interesting things from this analysis point of view is they are manipulating time as perceived by the public at that scene, because the public believes that attack on the Pentagon's U.S. Navy Command Center, where the duty officer was Captain Gerald DeConto, and the plane that's supposed to have hit it was piloted by someone by the name of Captain Chick Burlingham, who was U.S. Naval Academy classmate of Philip McConnell. It has a very interesting date and a time. So to give my voice a rest, and I'm just testing you, Craig, can you remember the date and the time?
Well, I do know there was a, what was it, 12-hour sync, or it was it 12 hours ahead? But basically, that lined up with Australia. And at that time, wasn't
Right.
Bill Clinton in Australia?
Yes, he was. He was at the port. It's not Port Arthur. In Queensland. That'll come to me. I'm not even in the chat room now because I'm so stretched. But whatever it was, he was in a Sheraton hotel in Queensland, where the date then was September the 12th, 2001. So stamped or date stamped for each of those four frames is September 12, 2001, which is odd, isn't it? Given that it was an attack theoretically on the United States at Eastern time, right?
That's correct. So here we are given a video shot, screenshots for screen or for images with a timestamp that isn't EST time. Oddly, it's 12 hours.
No, it's go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No.
Okay, from memory, and again, I don't even have time to look at pictures. This is memory. Should be 1737:19, right?
Yes.
Whereas, in fact, in the United States, that was 9:37:19. And there's a whole bunch of physical clocks that have been knocked off the walls. I don't know whether some are battery driven. I don't know what the internal timestamp, reference stamp inside the Pentagon is. You'd think that every room and every clock would be synchronized, so the people working inside the Pentagon would have the same perception of the time as the people outside the Pentagon, right?
Correct.
Anyway, those four frames show 17:37:19, which is the time in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and one of the most powerful banks in the United Arab Emirates, where I used to live, because my first wife used to work for them, was BNP Paribas, which is the co-escrow manager of the oil for food account set up by Maurice Strong, who just croaked about 3 weeks ago. Oh, what a tangled web we weave, eh? So now we have 17:37:19, which is the time in the Dubai Creek Hotel run by Sheraton. So we have Bill Clinton in the Sheraton Hotel in Queensland, and we have some very interesting visitors, probably flown in to get dialysis treatment associated with the Bin Laden family, staying at that hotel. And I think that's interesting. So when at 9 o'clock on the morning of September the 11th, 2001, General Alexander Haig is interviewed on Fox News, and the camera is pointing at the gash in the north face of the North Tower, and General Alexander Haig, who ran MGM casinos, probably in a conspiracy with Donald Trump, but I digress, he's asked, who do you think is behind this? This is 2 minutes before impact of the second plane on the South Tower. He says, well, I don't want to speculate, which is a preamble, of course, for these clowns that they're about to speculate. And you know what, Craig? He's reading a bloody script.
Most were on that day.
He's not reading a script.
Well, it was prepackaged, but no, most were that day, and I think that's obvious. When you had the news agencies reading a script in advance of the actual events happening. So carry on.
Well, you know what? They're actually looking at a common feed, right, from a command center that puts this attack together, right? And the media and the talking heads and the various other parties, they've got a common feed. And then if I understand, you're a talented news head, whatever, you're supposed to improvise. That is, you don't read word for word, but you improvise, right? So up on the screen, as seen by General Alexander Haig, would be these key words where he would say, well, I don't want to speculate, but we know where to look. it's either the Palestinians or the Bin Laden group.
David, I'm going to pause you for a
clear.
second. I'm going to stay with tradition. I know that a prayer has been introduced into the group, and I'm being asked if we could take 90 seconds. Today's prayer, which is shared up on our board, is, I'm going to get it here. Did you look at today's board? You probably haven't had time to, have you?
No, I haven't had any time this morning.
All right, real quick. I know it's Romans 12:2, and I'm looking for the. My field has been busy this morning. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. We'll give it 90 seconds and then resume. All right, thank you for that moment of silence. And Field is in the chat room, and he actually put in a comment giving us some fuselage support that it was Port Douglas, Australia. Thank you, Field. Go ahead and continue, David.
Thank you. I knew why I paid Field so much. He's just a mine of information. Okay, so back to the scene outside the Pentagon, the US Navy Command Center, after leaving General Alexander Haig not wishing to speculate, but suggesting, obviously from a news feed from somewhere, and I think the rest of the show, I think I can know where that feed was coming from. He says, we know where to look. It's either the Palestinians and the Bin Laden group. So you can see that very early on, Craig, the media were pumping out a target suspect without any time. Remember that the second plane hadn't the south face of the South Tower. And this clown is saying, we've got to look at the Bin Laden group. Now, the Bin Laden group is very interesting because that's the technical name for the operator of NetJets Middle East, operating out of RAF Northolt, which is where the Queen's flight was during the Second World War. Well, it was the King's flight back then, right? And it's very interesting because it is said that a NetJets aircraft, the small white plane, was tracking United 93 that allegedly went to the field outside Shanksville, Pennsylvania. So there would have been eyeball communication with one of the hijacked planes along a chain of command, a surveillance chain of command, if you will, going back at least to a NetJets aircraft of the type operated. Now, do I know it was NetJets Middle East operating that plane? I don't. Our parent company of that NetJets fleet was Warren Buffett.
Who was that?
And Berkshire Hathaway.
And where was Warren Buffett on 911 with Goldman Sachs?
Off at Airbus.
Off at Airport, right?
Right.
Off at
So
Air
it,
Force Base, correct?
so it looks like there's a very powerful command chain that to specifically engage in what is known as a friend and foe switching maneuver during a war game. Actually, that one was called Global Guardian. The rehearsal was Amalgam Virgo, 1st and 2nd of June, right?
Right. So in June of
So this is
2001, yeah, in June 2001, they basically publicly admitted the script that they were going to follow leading into September.
yes, absolutely. But the technology is fascinating, and I don't know how far that goes back, but it does get back, I believe, to the first virtual networks, whereby encryption, you could actually get inside what most people believe is a bona fide network and switch the perception of friends and foes,
Mm-hmm.
which is, and Field knows all those details about, was it Roosevelt and Kennedy shooting down or blowing up that plane? I think it was a mosquito, but, my memory is hazy. In Second World War, right? So a friend or foe maneuver is very, very dangerous, particularly in the middle of a war game. Because the one they rehearsed on June 1st and 2nd and the one they executed on 9/11. So in a military exercise with civilians milling around at the crime scene, what might that look like? Now, you remember that, I think you did it, that wonderful collage that clicked through the Federal Bridge Certification Authority. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And do you remember, can you just remember or define what the scenes were depicted and what that extraordinary element was related to the root key and who had custody of it? Can you just do a quick summary?
Well, I'm going to pull it up right now and I'll put it into the chat room. Oh, there's a good one. Basically, it was an implementation providing root keys from between both government and private corporations to the Federal Bridge Certification Authority. In it included several of the private companies such as Northrop. Um, Surprisingly, UPS I think was in it as well, and they're involved in the shuttling of immigrants. But anyhow, to continue on, you had some pharmaceutical companies, you had some banks, you had out of all 50 some states, you only had Illinois in the FBCA, and you also had, surprisingly, the UK MOD, or the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense, within the
And if
certification
I
authority.
could just check, it had the root authority. I don't know if it shows in that image. I don't see it in the chat room, but
I'll
the
get it
root
up.
authority. Okay, the root or root key. Could you just take over a bit, Field? Sorry, Craig, and I'll deal with this.
Come on, I'm better looking than Field, I hope. No, I'm joking, Field. I'm going to pop the image in of the FBCA. Now, we don't talk about this very much, but a few years ago, we uncovered this, something that few knew about. Oh, thank you, Ginger. Someone kicked your chair. Doing an upload here. There's another one. Let me look at the one at Ginger. Yeah, I have a larger one of that, but interesting to see that the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense is within the certification authority. I mean, basically integrated into our core government emergency network, I guess you could say. And again, all of this under the PKI, public key infrastructure. Um, David, are you back yet? Okay, he's not back. Um, right now the time is 12:30. If we end around 1 p.m., I'm going to give Field a quick call. I have to scoot out by 2, but maybe we can reach him over in England, get an update on what's going on out there and how he's doing. Let's see here. Who else is in the chat room today? Denise? Hello? Doug McNichol, Doreen, Duke. Duke is new to me. George? Ginger Cookie, I don't know who that is. Griffin Eagle, J. Morphew. Well, that's a new one to me. Jameskin. Boy, it's been quite a long time, Jameskin. Quite a road to be traveled. David Field, promise if David doesn't come back in 2 minutes, I'll give you a call. And Field, are you going to be doing a show tomorrow or Friday? If you can let the chat room know, that would be great. JJ Jono, I think I know who that is. John Patterson. Yes, I do know. Linda Kay, that's another new one. I know Sabao. Sabo. Maranatha, Autopilot. Patty Windsor. I can't believe how many new names we have in the chat room. It's been quite some time. Taco Man. Yes, I do. Straight Shot and Vanishing Point. Scrutinizer. Scottish. We had a full chat room today. Kind of nice for a unscheduled broadcast. Let me go back into the chat room, see if Field has replied. What's the weather doing, Craig? I'll tell you what, it's not snowing out here. A little cooler, but still I can wear a t-shirt and be pretty happy. So, okay, Field, tomorrow and Friday we will do a show as per normal. David and Chips. Agent Chips. Don't give away his secret alias. David? All right, let me see here. If I called, I'm going to try this. So I'm going to have both online possibly, and I don't know if this is going to work. And if we have issues, then we have issues. I'm going to use, for Skype, should I use Field McConnell or Agent Chips? I'm going to try that one right here. So I'm going to have to disconnect David. All right, let me disconnect David. He'll call back and we'll figure this out, but I'll give him a quick ring. AKA buckle number 006. Well, thank you again, Field. I received buckle number 065.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I'm back on.
All right. You almost got cut off, and I was going to bring Field on, but go ahead and oh, good.
I can't tell you how serious this other stuff is, but that's go ahead.
Oh, please continue. You're at the FBCA, and we were pointing out that the UK MOD was
okay. So let's look at that brilliant collage and think in terms of friend or foe switching. That means the United Kingdom Ministry of Defence can, using these super accurate time clocks, change any combination of those banks and defence contractors. And I think justice and every man and his dog, and isolate one group that the UK Ministry of Defence deems to be friends, and isolate them from the foes. If you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
That means to say you can create a group of foes that are perfectly synchronized. Meanwhile, you put clumps of companies, let's say banks and the defense contractors they invested, like Boeing. The biggest institutional shareholder of Boeing on 911 was the Teachers Pension Fund, which is the largest private pension fund in the world and pays pensions people like little Barry and Clinton, or Will, because they were all teachers. So if you have a conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States on 911, all you need to do is take the military guys in the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense. When you think about it, how long have they been doing this sort of thing? You know, like the man who never was, Second World War. So you guys in the United States, you've got a war game going on. The average American citizen doesn't know who is pretending to be the friend or who's pretending to be the foe, but the foe group, you know, the red team, is led by Canada. The friendly group, of which Captain Chick Burlingham was a part, Captain General DeConto, right, was the friend group, and they were in an exercise. The timing is adjusted through the United Kingdom Ministry of Defence by or over the red switch network, the defence red switch network. where the President of the United States has a terminal on his desk where you can push a red button that says flash override, override, immediate priority, and routine, or something to that effect. And when he pushes, for example, as the head of the National Command Authority with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff days, General Dunford, when he pushes the flash override, guess what happens?
I'm guessing that a circle operator comes on board and takes control. Is that correct?
And if he so wishes, tells him, get lost.
Correct.
Or switches the President of the United States down to a different system. So instead of stratum 0, the most accurate time in the world, which is reference to the master clocks, the President of the United States, George Bush, except they had him in a elementary school reading the little goat story, right? So Bush and Cheney were not able to the stratum 0 level of the network and engage all of the senior people in the National Command Authority, including, or in, whether he's a great guy or not, General Henry Shelton, who was on a plane to Europe, and he was not allowed to get back into American airspace. So the National Command Authority of the United States in 911 was, what shall I say, decapitated. And you know where the A3 Sky Warrior was being commanded, or how it was being commanded?
Did you say it was through the NetJets?
No, the A3 Sky Warrior.
Oh, was that the E4B? No.
Yeah, there was the E4B, and the E4Bs had been modified with cesium clocks by a small business administration company, probably controlled by a field sister, called Innovator. That is to say, the E4B over Washington would have been able to impute stratum 0 timing signals into the foe's assets, the foes of the United States of America, while at the same time disrupting the timing signals to the friend's assets, which included the assets available to Captain Gerald de Conto. Amazing, eh? Leaving the American citizens, the National Command Center, the Pentagon, the White House, and all of the assets in Washington associated, vulnerable to the attempted coup d'etat. Amazing. So who knew and who didn't? Well, the people who knew would have had access to the technology that engages or allows you to engage in friend and foe switching, where your friends become your enemies and your enemies become your friends. And then the American military go off to Afghanistan and Iraq to die in large. Horrifying, eh?
Well, what?
So we've got the E4Bs. Go ahead.
Well, one thing what people realize is that there's a lot of patsies, and even though these people are corrupt and dirty, and we can talk about Cheney and Bush, but it's the most dangerous terrorist that you've made aware of, in my opinion, have been the bureaucrats, such as Christine Marcy, Baginski, Maureen Baginski, who was deeply embedded in the FBI. She was number 2 or 3, but I know she had a strong. But anyhow, it's the bureaucrats
and
that.
The NSA.
Well, go ahead and repeat that, David. You broke up.
And also, she was a senior person at the National Security Agency.
Correct.
And she's now the National Security Advisor. So you're right, as you said, a Serco operator would pick up the other end of the phone to talk to the President of the United States, provided he was within close access to a red switch terminal, which I think is called an IST2, which used to be on Barry's desk until 2009, until someone took it away from him. Because these people don't trust little Barry, right? This is way out of his depth. I mean, the guy was hanging Venetian blinds in Chicago as a community organizer up to the time he appeared as a junior senator from Illinois, right?
Plus, he was occupied by Reggie Love while in the White House. So, of course, how can you trust a guy like that?
Yeah, they've taken the IST-2 terminal away from him, so he can't or would not know that they were engaged in friend-foe switching fraud and or attack in the Bataclan concert hall in Paris just before the the Earth Day meeting in Paris to put a carbon cap on us, or the one in San Bernardino. But the E4B is just one part of it, right? The E4B is the big battle scene stuff. The more close-up is handled by a Northrop Grumman surveillance aircraft, which has got an eight-arm propeller, I think, because it's got to limit vibrations or some crap like that, right? And you know where they fly from?
No, I don't.
America's carrier fleet. It's up a friend-foe switching network to execute a coup d'etat, a military coup d'etat on the United States of America. You set up your command center on the carrier fleet. You send out which are made by Northrop Grumman, to do early warning to protect the carrier fleet and to identify friends and foes. So remember, I believe the Dwight D. Eisenhower was in dock, and the USS Washington was off the coast of Hawaii, very appropriately. Field can, I'm sure, correct me in the chat room. And somewhere in the world was the ship Charles de Gaulle, which carries Hawkeye surveillance aircraft, and apparently is hooked by Hanoi John Kerry through to the Defense Red Switch network operated by Circuit. So all of the American nuclear carriers, they're somewhere in the world, including quite probably one sailing or steaming from the straits that separates mainland China from Taiwan. And China wants Taiwan back. And the communists in your country, Craig, want to give it back. But they take Taiwan unless they disable or disrupt the particular USS carrier that would have been sailing in the Straits of Formosa, which was the plan on 911.
So I want to make clear that the plans for 911 were not completely executed because, and you can go ahead and explain what happened that prevented all these plans from.
Well, Abel Danger stopped it. Now, we have the luxury of having the same name or different spelling of the intelligence works set up by General Hilton. And I think Field wrapped my knuckles a little bit because I implied that General Dunford, the present chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, might have been remiss or weak or in some way. The last show, he pointed us at an image of Dunford looking askance, if that's the right word, at Little Barry. Right? So I don't want to make any judgment about the intelligence of these people. The assumption is if you get to that top level, you've got to be bright. But there's a problem. If your chain of command has been corrupted or compromised, then command authority reports to the President of the United States, which is Barry Soetoro, who's had his red switch removed from him. So I don't think Americans can be absolutely confident that the National Command Authority has control over the Defense Red Switch network anymore. I think it's been taken out of their hands by the private company Circuit. And that poses a huge problem because down that command chain, 3-star and 2-star admirals and generals, etc., a military hierarchy, they got to obey
David, I want to have
But
you.
what happens if
David, go ahead and please repeat that. You're getting some reverb and breaking up, so go ahead and just repeat that last statement.
the 2-star and 3-star generals and admirals have to assume that a command or an order or takes place on the red switch network, a command which is the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. Okay. Am I getting through?
You know what? Next time, if I do this again with you, I'm going to give you a call on your phone, and that way we're not going to have to rely on Skype.
Okay.
But you're breaking in and out. I don't know what's going to after we finish this, and then I re-edit the video and upload it. Hopefully, it'll be a little clearer. But go ahead and continue.
Okay, I'll talk slowly. Maybe someone could encourage me with a 5x5 in the chat room. But the chain of command that reached the threat on 911 through the red switch network would have done exactly what they're doing. I see 1.7 times 2.4.
That was funny, Doug.
Yeah, they would have done exactly what they're told because they change it, and you can't authenticate it other than through that public key infrastructure, where the root key is in the Ministry of Defence in the United Kingdom. The Ministry of Defence in the United Kingdom stood down American friends on 911 to increase the odds of successful coup d'etat? No. But some elements within the United Kingdom Ministry of Defence did exactly that.
Right. Well, please remind listeners the association between the UK MOD and Serco and their recent new chairman or new president.
Okay. You're asking me to just remind people of the links between Serco?
Serco, the UK MOD. Who was in the UK MOD and then became, was it his brother? Winston Churchill's grandsons.
Yeah, the two grandsons, right? One is Nicholas and the other's Rupert Soames. And Nicholas Soames was the United Kingdom Minister of Defence from 1994 to 1997, when Malaysia had its air traffic control subcontracted to Serco, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rupert Soames became the Chief Executive Officer of Serco about
2 years ago.
Now, problem is, what was Serco before it was called Serco? It was RCA, Radio Corporation of America, GB 1929. And RCA GB 1929 had stolen all of the wireless patents associated with Marconi. And RCA GB 1929 developed the wireless communication systems for what is known as the continuity of government that supported the exercise of 911. And they were hooked through to the command centers on certain, probably not all, of America's aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, including, I would allege, the Washington and the Eisenhower, and the French aircraft carrier, the Charles de Gaulle. And this is the devilish or diabolical plot by Hanoi John. Now, Hanoi John comes from, on his mother's side, the Forbes family, which were opium traffickers in the 19th century. That's where they got the bulk of their money. And the Forbes empire has a chateau in France. And effectively, what John Hanoi Kerry is, he is a Old Alliance agent. And he founded or promoted the Earth Day Revolution in 1970 when he was negotiating with the communist North Vietnamese. So here's the network, or roughly. you have the United Kingdom Ministry of Defence infiltrated by a small number of agents, rather like MI6 was infiltrated by the Cambridge fire, who were mainly homosexual and were passing information on to the Russians that enabled the Russians to build the atomic bomb. You've got the root key control, which allows you to reconfigure, become your foes, and your foes become your friends for 30 hours. Why is 30 hours significant? Because that was the duration of the exercise for Amalgam Virgo, where the Canadians were able to act as allies and then switch to enemies during the exercise, with the United States Air Force stood down. So the key with Switch Network is, before you have any chance of overthrowing the government of the United States of America, you go to the skies of the Air Force and put significant ships in dock, so you can't react. Let's say we got a little further and knocked out the Capitol Center building and killed 500 congressmen and senators. What do you think geopolitically or geostrategically would have happened in the area around China?
Well, from what you said earlier, I would assume they would have gone after Taiwan.
Correct. And would America have been able to defend Taiwan? No.
We couldn't even defend ourselves.
You can't even defend yourselves because you're stood down. Not that your people are not competent,
right,
or not brave or capable, but your command center has been neutralized. And that was in the Pentagon, the Navy Command Center in the Pentagon. The most powerful military asset
is the Navy
at that time, significantly more powerful theoretically than the command centers on the carriers, that essentially would have allowed the President of the United States, if he'd been anywhere near a red switch phone, to communicate with the people on the carriers and deploy them geostrategically to protect the United States of America and its allies. You wouldn't have been able. You couldn't protect yourself. You certainly wouldn't have been able to correct its allies. Game, set, and match to Hanoi John. And the Earth Day command centers on certain members of the carrier fleet, the US carrier fleet. And incidentally, the Theodore Roosevelt has just been docked to San Diego. 2 weeks, I think, before the San Bernardino massacre, which happened during the summit meeting in Paris, right? What was the message to the delegates in Paris? If you don't come up with a carbon cap so that we can lock in all the countries of the world during Earth Day to deindustrialize and hand over their assets to us, organized crime, we can take out any group of Americans anywhere in the world at our leisure. Now, what was the interesting thing about the victims in San Bernardino? They weren't actually, as I first thought, the mentally disabled or developmentally disabled, as they call it, people. But you remember, with ethnic cleansing, the Nazi concentration camps, they used to take people out of, I don't know if that's the polite word, we used to call them lunatic asylums in the UK, and kill them. That is, this was a eugenic exercise, right? Now, in San Bernardino, they didn't kill the developmentally disabled. They killed the handlers, the people who are looking after them. And these people are serious scumbags because they are engaged in effectively what the eugenic society attempted to do, and the eugenic society grew out of the Fabian society. It's depopulation and cleaning of the earth of anyone they think needs to be killed, right? So that friend or foe switching, Craig, it doesn't matter whether you're yellow, you're black, you're a woman, you're a lesbian, one-legged, two-legged, three-legged. The exercise is that they're looking at, right, is how do you identify the leaders of Earth Day? So eventually the people behind Earth Day control the world. and you advance their cause, right? The whistleblowers, the enemies, they get on a plane and they don't come home, right?
Right.
That's sobering, isn't it? How bad can it get? Well, how about the Rwanda genocide, where you do some friend or foe through the French military, and you take out the Falcon 50, bringing the president of Rwanda back to Kigali from using a French air base. Then you switch in the propaganda machine at the Mille Colline. You call the Tutsis cockroaches. You bring in 1 million machetes from Boutros Ghali, the foreign secretary or whatever it is, from Egypt. You're ready to go. 800,000 dead later, you've got this prick Bill Clinton saying that was a terrible mistake I made. It wasn't a mistake.
No. Well, I guess you could say then they. I don't know the details. I have come across research on the Serbs and Croatians in Yugoslavia and how Bill Clinton that was set up via the intelligence agencies, but that was a mass genocide ploy that it was created. It wasn't there. It was created. So go ahead and continue.
Right. Well, you have Christopher, the foreign secretary at the time,
Stephen?
1994.
Oh,
Christopher
Plummer? No. Maybe someone in the chat room.
Foreign secretary, anyway.
Yes.
They had an 8A company called Base One Technologies just up the road from the future home of the Clintons in Chappaqua, Chester County, New York. And it's registered basically as a front at arm's length from the Department of State, so they can set up honey traps around the world, where the people falling into the honey trap, the black and the white hats, don't get anywhere near the core system operated by the State Department. So what the purpose of that is, black hats, white hats in, and you determine who you want to rub out, right? That's a perfect trap for friend-foe switching. You've got white hats in the honey trap, and you've got black hats in the honey trap, but the people running surveillance on both can determine whether you want to treat, on that particular day, the white hats as black hats or the black hats as white hats. Clever, right? They send a message to the Security Council, the United Nations, asking them to debate the withdrawal of UN forces from Rwanda. They were stood down. That's the classic scam by the Clintons and John. They like standing down America's military forces and America's military intelligence and removing the possibility that America as a people, or Americans as a people, can deliver what they've done hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of times. They've gone off in the right direction to do the right thing and protect humanity. Everyone in the Vietnam equation is demonized, except this guy, Hanoi John. Right? But think about it. When the Americans pulled out of Vietnam, how many people died when the North Vietnamese came in? He's responsible. At least 250,000. That kind of people who would be very happy. Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dawn, little Bambi, etc. The perception is that we, members of the industrial world, perhaps, although I don't like necessarily use that word, led for the good by the Five Eyes countries, where liberties used to prevail, but they don't anymore. The United States of America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. Where are they now? They've joined the Nine Eyes countries. What are the other four countries? Brazil, Russia, India, China. Right? And they've now all clipped into Earth Day, where one of the crimes will become, and it'll be punishable by death, violating the cap on carbon dioxide, where little Larry and probably Hanoi John and Hillary Clinton don't seem to understand yeah, I see the clock. I'll be going in a minute. That they're breathing out at 40,000 parts per million carbon dioxide, and in fact, they're violating the cap set in Paris. So it's 12:01. One question, Craig, or
Yes. Oh, are you there?
no? So do you have a question like for bang out? Or?
Oh no. We know China realizes this is all a ploy, but didn't they recently, or they're in the process of launching some satellites into outer space to monitor carbon capping of its citizens?
You know what? I really believe that carbon capping, the Earth Day hub control room is now on the French ship, the
Charles de
Charles de Gaulle,
Gaulle.
and that's why I keep hammering on. You sucker, and on that ship, you'll find all the evidence to nail the criminals, and you'll be able to recover the red switch network that they must have on that ship in order to be able to go after ISIS in Syria and Iraq, together with the Hawkeye, probably modified Hawkeye Northrop Grumman surveillance, which enables them to synchronize the crime scene so perfectly. So that would be the counter coup that would basically stop these clowns dead in their tracks. But I digress. And sorry that I'm in such a rush.
No,
I've got to go.
listen, I may do one more with you before Christmas, and if we do, I'm going to call you on your phone. That way, we won't get interruptions. We won't get because you putting out a lot of information, and we want to make sure people are absorbing it and being able to hear it. So, I'm going to let you go now, and I'm going to give Field a quick call, and then I'm going to be out the door. But you're going to be posting later to Tim, and he'll get that up at AD. So, good talking to you again, David.
Okay. Thanks. And sorry I've got in such a rush. Bye now.
Bye. All right. Let me see here. Let me check into the chat room. There's my high school boyfriend. Oh boy. Huh. Oh, Phil, when I was, let me see here real quick. That was 1965 when I was a sophomore at Ramey High School, which is in Puerto Rico. All right, Field, I'm going to give you a quick ring. I actually need the restroom, so when I give you a call, you can take over and give me a moment to go to the little boy's room. Let me see here. Agent Chips. And here we go. Ooh, I can call his mobile. Should I say hello, Your Eminence?
Okay, and I'll say good afternoon, Your Effluence.
All right, I need to run to the boys' room, so I'm going to let you start up, and then I'll be back in about 2 minutes, okay?
Okay, and I hope that you'll wash your hands before you come back.
Okay, I'll make an
Okay.
effort.
Yeah, bye-bye. Let's see. I got to turn this off. Aha. Let's see if anybody can hear me, like 5 by 5. Anyone here? Oops, spelled it wrong. I imagine Craig will be right back. I had a little bounce. Let's see. Thank you, David. Take care. You have 2 minutes. James can put up a picture of Sam Cam. Give her a line. She's up for a laugh. We can hear you great, Field, says Ginger Cookie. Oh, good. And Taco Man agrees. And Ginger agreed again. So anyway, Craig will be right back. That picture that Taco Man just put up is me with a cup of coffee, Chick Burlingame, and then that eagle is that was a live eagle that David's wife, Marin, took a picture of. Let's see who this picture is. Oh, yes, Vanishing Point and John Patterson. And that was taken the other night. You can see the Christmas tree behind Vanishing Point's head. And you can see they both have some matter of facial hair. KP is back. Oh, KP, you're back.
I sure am. I'm looking at the picture of John Patterson and VP. Nice one.
Yeah, there's Christmas tree. We had a very nice table by the fireplace, and we had a table for 5 and a Christmas tree, and we had a very nice dinner. I don't even remember what we had. I can't I don't have a clue as to what I had, but those two gentlemen, John Patterson on the left in the Abel Danger shirt, and then Vanishing Point on the right, and then Denise from the UK, Denise Clark, and Afterburner. And this is funny. In fact, nobody's heard this story before. When the first two arrived at the restaurant, we told the staff there that we were arriving for a 2 p.m. reservation. They said, "Well, what's the name?" And I said, "Well, I think it's either Ann Bransky or Field McConnell." They said, "Well, we don't have a reservation for either." And that's because Ann, who is in the picture there's two blonde ladies. Ann is the one in the white and black, and Denise is the one in the black. And then there's myself with the um, JR's T-shirt under a blue and white shirt and an Abel Danger buckle. And then over on the far side of Denise is John Patterson with his Abel Danger shirt. So anyway, after a while, we figured out that Ann Bransky has another name she sometimes goes by, and that's who the reservation was for. But anyway, it all worked out well, and I always like things to go on time, and our reservation did not go anywhere close to being on time, so I got mildly frustrated. And then all the Brits put me in my place and told me to be quiet and sit on my thumbs, which I did, and then we had a lovely dinner. So Barbara Ann says, "Beautiful picture of you and your cute boy. Love the sweaters and how he's hugging you." That's interesting, Barbara Ann. Right before the photographer took that photo, my son's feet slipped off whatever he was standing on. Whether he was standing on a chair or my leg, I don't remember, because that was 1986. But he slipped, and he had to hang on for dear life, or he would have fallen down, which is why he's hugging me. Anyway, Craig, you're back.
I sure am. You know
And
that we had guests out here in Phoenix a few days ago.
would those guests be Mary and Phil?
Yes, sir. And they brought me a nice belt buckle, number 065. Appreciated that very much. Their company was fantastic.
Well, when I went to England, there were numerous reasons for my trip, one of which was to relax and get away from reality and go over there and seek a better reality. Another one was to deliver the belt buckles. And I brought the belt buckles to Denise C. in the UK, and she distributed them throughout the UK, with the exception of the people that met us for dinner. And those people are visible in the photos. You've seen Vanishing Point and John Patterson and Denise C. and Ann Bransky. So they all got their belt buckles in person. And Agent McDime, who allegedly is in Cyprus, we're not sure if he's really in Cyprus or not, because there was a waiter named Greg, and Greg seemed to know a lot of the stuff that Doug McDime would have known. So I'm not so certain that Greg wasn't Doug McDime, but he never tipped his hand, and we didn't blow his cover. So anyway, I had a lovely trip over there, and I got back yesterday, and I want to thank you for handling David for the first hour. I tried to put together a half-decent show ad with some stimulating thoughts, but I really didn't care to go down to the cold studio, and it's been sitting there for 6 days while I've been gone, so I'm sure it's nice and cold. But I'll be there tomorrow, and I'll be there Friday to answer any question. In other words, if there's anybody wondering if we're going to do a show Friday and Wednesday, yes, we are. And I'll be doing that from the studio, but hopefully I'll go down earlier in the morning and turn the heat on. So what else would you like to talk about, Craig?
Well, how many days have you been there now?
Oh, I'm not there. I'm at home in Plum City.
Oh, you are back. Oh,
yes,
when did you arrive back? Maybe I wasn't paying attention.
Oh no, you were paying attention. It's just I slipped in the back door. I left London yesterday at 12:45, which is just after lunch and before 1 p.m. And it was Delta Flight 11 that left right on time. It got to Minneapolis about 20 minutes early at about 3:40. So I went and got my bag, and I converted my British pounds and British Visa card back to US dollars, and then I drove. Actually, I think it's okay to respect your parents and respect your children and respect your peers. You're a peer of mine, therefore I respect you, Greg. And David's a peer of mine, so I respect him. And Ann and Denise and John Patterson and Vanishing Point, and whether that was Doug or whether that was Greg, whoever that was, I respect them. But I think it's okay to honor your parents, honor your children, honor your peers. And so when I drove home last night, I was driving my father's car. The last car he bought himself new was a 1994 Lincoln, which means nothing at all to anybody, except it meant a lot to him. And therefore, when he passed away, it now means a lot to me to sometimes drive his car around and have pleasant thoughts of my mother and father. And I hope that when you and I are gone, Craig, and of course I'll be going first since I started 16 years ahead of you. But I hope that your daughter, notice I didn't say her name because I don't want to blow her cover, but I hope that your daughter and my kids, think favorably upon us, because regardless of what we may fail to accomplish or what we may accomplish, I think I speak for all parents everywhere around the world that we want our children to have a better life than we've had, and we want to leave this world a better place than what it was when we woke up. And notice I didn't say when we showed up, because I showed up in 1949, but I started figuring out some of this stuff. Well, actually, I know exactly when I started figuring it out. I figured it out in the morning at 9/11 when I took a look at that Boeing drone hitting the second tower, and I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that that was not a human pilot flying that aircraft. And if it was not a human pilot, then what was it? And so for the last, that was 2001. This is 2000. For the last 14 years and 3 months, I've been sitting here or sitting someplace thinking about the great deception, which was 9/11. And Craig, can you imagine the billions, if not trillions of dollars spent on security that's unnecessary because it is absolutely impossible to hijack an airplane?
Yeah, I just saw the budget for the DHS went up from last year from around $6 billion to double digits. Of course, it's falsified security, and the DHS is running all the drills, which active shooters are the ones. We had 3 military men at San Bernardino. Hey, I got some questions for you, because now that I got you online, I got to do your YouTube channel, and I get a lot of questions, and I pretty much just push them to the side. But and you're gonna laugh when I ask you these things, but let's put it on record. So, because they're asking for you to give your feedback, and the first one would be the Flat Earth conspiracy. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I get that comment. I mean, I get that question a fair amount. And another question I get that I don't know anything about is chemtrails. But as far as the flat Earth, I've been up high enough, and the highest I ever got was 57,000 feet. But from 57,000 feet, you can see the curvature of the Earth. And it's not dark at 57,000 feet, but it's less light than it is, say, at 30,000 feet. So I have no doubt that the Earth is round. I question why these people want to. Duke says it's a hollow Earth. Now, I don't know where Duke's coming from, but I do know that Richard E. Byrd, is that the name? I think so. Somebody actually had a very interesting event back in the early 1900s, and they found an opening in the Earth, supposedly. I don't know that. I'm not suggesting that's true. I'm just saying there's some interesting stories out there. But as far as the Earth being round or flat, nope, it's not flat. If it was flat, the water would all run off the edges and then drip underneath to whatever is below the Earth. It's round, and I've seen it from 57,000 feet. Also, another way I know it's round is in 1972, when I was forced to do some water survival training in Pensacola. They tossed a bunch of us guys into the Pensacola Bay, and we had to inflate either a raft or a Mae West or whatever we had, and we had to wait to be picked up. And I can't remember now. I think we got picked up by a helicopter, but that's 43 years ago. It could have been a boat too. But I remember sitting there in the water with my head probably 8 to 10 inches above the surface of the water, and yet I could not see some of the other young men who were doing the water survival training with me. And that's because the curvature, even at that very low altitude, like my head is just above the water because I was floating in some type of a flotation device. But people that were probably within 1,000 yards of me, I couldn't see them because there was not enough of them exposed above the water and the surface of the water. I don't know if have you ever been in the ocean, Craig, and just looked from the water where you're suspended there by buoyancy? Have you ever noticed how far or how not so far you can see? In other words, you can't really, as far as something, oh, that's a nice picture, Denise. See, thank you. As far as seeing another head bobbing in the water, that head bobbing in the water would need to be probably within 300 or 500 feet of you, or you're not going to see it, and that's due to the curvature of the Earth. Does that make any sense, or do you have a rebuttal to that, Craig?
No rebuttal. Taco Man said it was a question of is the curve or is it not there according to math, and that's basically what I think you've explained. I don't want to dwell on this. I just want to put you on record. And then let's go back last one, which is the planes versus no planes. And I basically, from my understanding, is we have the CGI effects that were broadcast to the media. There was a fascinating video I think someone put up earlier into the chat room, but people get misconstrued between what they saw on TV and what people actually saw on the day of 9/11 and some of the other videos. So would you like to make a quick comment and just knock this one out real quick? And then that's the last question.
Sure. As far as the planes versus no planes, I think it was in the summer of 2008, I had a 2 versus 1 debate. I debated John Lear and Jim Fetzer, and we discussed the planes and no planes stuff. And at the end of our hour and a half or 2-hour conversation on the radio, they both suggested that that was the best interview they ever participated in, even though neither one of them agreed with me, and I didn't agree with them either, because oftentimes when people are trying to sell a false story, they will give you 2 bad choices. And with CGI or no planes, those are both bad choices. There were plenty of eyewitnesses that saw full-scale Boeing flying vehicles hit those buildings. The first one being a drone replacement for American 11, and the second one being a drone replacement for United 175. And when they say there are no planes, if you want to be really liberal and loose, you could say there's no airliners, because the flying vehicles that hit the towers were drones. In other words, they were full-scale Boeing aircraft that had no humans on board. And this goes to another date that I think is really significant. But you'll remember, Craig, that I filed a lawsuit against Boeing. The name of the lawsuit, and it was February 27th of February 27th of 2007. The title of the lawsuit was Field McConnell versus ALPA and Boeing. And that was on, I believe, the 27th of February was a Thursday. Anyway, even though a lot of people think, well, what can some goofball in Fargo do with a lawsuit? Well, I was the goofball in Fargo that filed that lawsuit. Within 4 business days, Boeing was admitting in London that they had an uninterruptible autopilot, and then they got a little bit of diarrhea of the mouth because maybe somebody can post the link to that story. It was in London. I think it's called London Today. But anyway, the date of the story was 3 March 3307, and I think the title of the story was 9/11 Impossible or something like that, meaning that with the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot, another 9/11 would be impossible. And Boeing, in the article where they admitted that they had the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot deployed, Boeing went on to bury themselves by saying, and had the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot been available in 2001, 9/11 would have been impossible. And they really skewered themselves with that comment because Boeing has been installing Boeing uninterruptible autopilots in brand new Boeing aircraft since 1995. Airbus has been installing them since 1989. Sukhoi uses Boeing uninterruptible autopilot. I don't know about Embraer and Bombardier, but they also have uninterruptible autopilots regardless of who builds them. And something that strikes me as rather treasonous, Craig, is that right now, this very day, in Everett, Washington, Boeing Aircraft Corporation is building brand new KC-46A aerial refueling tankers. The nickname for this KC-46A is Pegasus, Pegasus, and I understand that they have Thales, Thales. In other words, a brand new military tanker aircraft being built by Boeing is having French uninterruptible autopilots installed, and the manufacturer over in France is Thales, Thales. And I think that every American, other than Lindsey Graham, John McCain, and John Kerry, and Hillary Clinton, and my sister, would probably consider that an act of treason. Because, in fact, Craig, you just put up a picture of the KC-46 refueling a B-2, and that KC-46 could be controlled now by Thales or anybody else who understands how to get a hold of that uninterruptible autopilot. And I think that the back door to the autopilot now has been closed since we published long ago. In fact, it was you who published it on the 8th of March of 2014 when Malaysia 370 supposedly went missing, which it never did. You, Craig Peterson, put out the Boeing uninterruptible autopilot YouTube, and people thought that I did it, so I got a lot of credit for your work. Thank you very much. I also got a call 2 weeks later, 2 weeks to the day. It was March 22nd, Saturday also, when Matthias Chang called me from Malaysia and said, would I come to Malaysia and explain to him and some of his peers exactly what happened to their airplane. And so I did. And I don't know what caused me to do this, but on March 29th, which was well before I left, I was contacted on the 22nd of March. On March 29th, I was writing some fiction, and I said that if Malaysia did not expose the BUAP and ATI, that they'd lose the aircraft by the 17th of July of 2014, and specifically before 1900 hours on that date. And guess what? At 1735 on the 17th of July of 2014, Malaysia 17 went down. And of course, Malaysia 17 was the airframe that had been Malaysia 370. And the two populations of corpses that fell from the sky included about 235 or so decomposed, partially decomposed corpses, and then about 40 freshly killed corpses. And the 40 fresh kills were odd in that they had no blood. And right. I don't know who the 40 were, but I do know that supposedly on Malaysia 17, there were some of the world's HIV experts, and the people that created HIV probably did not want those experts to prevail. And when it comes to experts in HIV, I think the original expert when it comes to AIDS and HIV would be Dr. Boyd Ed Graves. He's the man who found the CIA patent for HIV and AIDS, and it was dated, off the top of my head, it was dated 1971. But perhaps somebody in the chat room could Google that It's Boyd, B-O-Y-D, Ed, E-D, Graves, G-R-A-V-E-S. In fact, I can do it because I forgot I'm not on live stream right now. I'm at home. There you go, Craig. Boyd Ed Graves plus patent plus AIDS plus 1971. And I think I can Google that while you either ask me stuff or respond to what I might have just said. Over to you, Craig.
Oh, no, I'll do it right now. You can look in the chat room, see if there's anything you... Oh, this is beautiful. No, it's not beautiful, but this is what he revealed. There's a close-up of this image that Dr. Graves is holding, quite relative to what he exposed. And I'll pop that in. But do you want to... pretty much, I'm done with my questions. Those were the only two I had. And no matter what, I think what people fail to understand is that Field, he's giving his opinion, whether it's the end all or be all, that's your choice. We all make our own decisions. We all make our, follow our own guidance. There's a lot of people when we talk about chemtrails, I go to other sources, people that spend time just as much as Field spends time on the Boeing BUAP, and a lot of the other stuff. He doesn't have time to cover everything. Okay, so if you want to talk about chemtrails, I go to Dr. Russell Blaylock. Fascinating info. But anyhow, here comes the picture. Field, back to you.
Okay, I'm waiting for a picture. What am I looking for a picture of, Craig?
This man right here.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there he is. That's Boyd Ed Graves, and as you can clearly see, he's a black fellow. He was a black fellow. They killed him. Why did they kill him? Well, he has an interesting history. He's from Cleveland, Ohio. He went to the Naval Academy with the class of 1975. It's a small world, Craig, but do you recall when Bucky and I and Sunshine and Gloria went to the Kaplan Ranch with the thought that maybe we'd end up operating that ranch? Well, it turns out the guy who owned the ranch, whose name is Cliff Collier, he was actually in the same company, which means it's not like corporation company, it's military company, but he was in the same company as Boyd Ed Graves, and they were in the same class, the class of 1975. And Boyd Ed Graves graduated from Annapolis, and he 2 years into his obligation, 2 years into the obligation of 5 years of service to pay back his education, some episode happened where it became obvious that he was a homosexual, so they kicked him out of the Navy, which is interesting because shortly thereafter, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, Al Gray, participated in the assassination of Colonel James Abel, and General Al Gray was a raging homosexual also. As far as the flat earth thing, which people keep putting up, you can't prove a negative. You can only prove a positive. So someone cannot say that, the world is flat because you can't prove it's not flat. You can only lead a horse to water and tell them. In my case, I've been high enough where I've seen the curvature of the earth, and that's the end of the argument. And any other words out of me will not be forthcoming when it comes to flat earth. As far as chemtrails, I know nothing about that. I know that there's a lot of people in the United Kingdom and Europe, and specifically in Europe, I'm talking about Otto Pilot over in Trondheim, Norway. He certainly believes in chemtrails, and the people I know in the United Kingdom, I believe they tend to believe in chemtrails, and I can sort of see where they're coming from, because when I was in England last week on the few clear days I experienced, most of the time when I was there it was windy, cold, overcast, and wet. But there were a couple days where it was clear enough where I could see the contrails or the chemtrails, whatever you want to call them, and I will make this statement that it looks to me like there's a lot more of that type of activity over the United Kingdom than there is over where I live in the United States. Go ahead, Craig.
Wow, no, I didn't know that. In Phoenix, we have it fairly bad. It's one of the more highly sprayed areas in the United States for some reason. I don't know why, but I've heard the UK, but it's that bad. I mean, as far as when you look up in the skies, you see unnatural formations and clouds.
Yeah, you could. It's they. In fact, I'd like to get some support from anybody in the UK who might have an opinion. I see Afterburner just left, so she won't be opining. Doug M is in Cyprus, and so he may or may not have an opinion. Then there's Denise and Vanishing Point. Liverish, okay, Desert Peace says chemtrails are real, flown by Evergreen under CIE contract. This allows them to fly in military airspace like I have over my residence. Okay, well, that's good enough for me. If Desert P
Yes.
tells me they're real, then I believe they're real. And another person who would also, like Desert P, talk about Evergreen would be Tim White up in Vancouver, British Columbia. He has a great wealth of knowledge and a lot of evidence of chemtrail spraying, and he's got pictures from inside the aircraft that pump this stuff out. My question on chemtrails, and I'll ask the question to Desert P, maybe he can answer in chat. What is it about the chemical stuff they're poisoning us with that prevents other people, like, say, the Rothschilds or John Kerry or Barry Swatero, how do they prevent getting affected by the same chemicals that are being sprayed on we the peons? That's not a invitation to an assassination. It's just a serious question, Desert P. Maybe they spray stuff and they have an anecdote to it. I don't know.
Well, no, I could answer that.
Go ahead.
From a limited knowledge, but as I said, Dr. Russell Blaylock is a neurologist, maybe a neurosurgeon neurologist who's identified the elements in chemtrails, and a lot of them are minerals that the body doesn't need, one of them being aluminum, which is neurotoxic and excites the brain and so forth. We can cleanse our body, but most people enjoy fast foods and eating GMOs. And so what happens with these elements like aluminum, some of the other ones they can list in the chat room, but they disrupt our immunity, and it just only keeps, it's an escalation. It keeps getting worse and worse to the point where we become physically compromised in our health. So just good eating and the right supplements and so forth, detoxing with certain things will help keep our system relatively clean. Doesn't guarantee it, but in their case, we have no idea how they live, to be quite honest with you, but they probably have less exposure to the outside air. I mean, I have no idea, but they know if it's being done that they can protect themselves. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll leave it to Desert P to explain to me, maybe by email. And while I'm talking about Desert P, and some people might wonder why I'm deferring to his opinion, that's because back in November of 2010, when I predicted, and I have no idea what caused me to predict this, but on November 8th of 2010, I sent a message to the federal government saying that we were going to have I thought that the conditions were ripe for us to have an aviation false flag in the next 4 days. And I sent that message at 15:35 East Coast time on Monday, the 8th of November. And later that day, about 5 or 6 hours later, a mystery missile was photographed. There's a good picture. That's myself and James Crosby. Craig, you just put that picture up. Do you see the thing dangling between my head and his head?
Yes, I do.
That's a HARP array on the bottom of the Arecibo radio telescope, and that, if too bad that the radio telescope's not visible. It's a great big steel triangle that's suspended from 3 points. It's over a parabolic valley in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. And had the people at Arecibo had any clue as to what I do, or the things that I've been doing, they probably wouldn't have invited me in to have a grand tour of the radio telescope. And when James Crosby and the rest of the people went on the tour, I helped myself to take some pictures in the control room. And the timing of my visit, that was March of 2011. I don't remember when Fukushima occurred, but I think it was either February. Oh, that's a nice picture I haven't seen in a long time, Craig. That me sitting in the Candyland Express aircraft. I love your images, and someday before I kick the bucket, I hope we have a collection of these images because you put a lot of effort into it. I can see that there's the yellow Chrysler, and there's the WW2 KIA license plate. And so that we've done a lot of good work over the last 9 years. Back to Desert Pete.
Yes.
When I predicted that we were going to have an aviation false flag within 5 or 7 hours, a mystery missile was videotaped by a news helicopter over San Diego, and to this day, I don't believe the Pentagon or the mainstream media has explained to the public what that was all about. But Desert Pete either told me or put me in touch with someone who told me what had happened. And so I have great faith and confidence in Desert Pete. And that's not his real name. Let's see. Desert Pete says, I should add the guidance problem seems only to be with Raytheon missiles, not Lockheed missiles and space missiles. The two Tridents worked properly last month. Oh, interesting. As I recall, it was not just guidance. It was also a blocking of the second stage booster, I thought, and that was an EMP. Desert P, if you think back, on the same day that that missile event happened, which was November 8th of 2010, there was a cruise ship that had left San Diego or Los Angeles heading southwest, and it was probably maybe 400 to 700 miles down track from California, and it got hit with an EMP, and it shut down the propulsion, and it shut down everything, including the plumbing. And I think if you want to have a really bad time, get on a cruise ship with no plumbing, no food, no propulsion, and no air conditioning, and then wish you'd stayed at home. Over to you, Craig.
Well, no, I'm pretty much. I actually need to scoot out. I have
Okay, good.
an event coming up, but it was nice talking. This is the first time you and I have actually gone on air, and I led the charge on it. I kind of enjoyed it.
Okay, well, let's do it again sometime. At your convenience.
Yeah, I would like to do one again. Maybe with David. This time, I don't know what the issue is. Maybe it's David. No, I love the guy, but it seems whenever he gets on the phone, it just doesn't work via Skype. So I might try calling him on a cell phone and put it up next to the speaker.
Okay.
Let me think if there's anything else. No. Again, thank you so much for the belt buckle. I believe Ginger received something in the mail. And James suggested it was a Merkin. I don't think so.
Yeah, actually, James doesn't know how to spell Merkin.
I saw that.
Merkin.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad you like your belt buckle. And by the way, number 65 was promised elsewhere. But then when somebody, and I don't remember who the somebody was, but somebody said, have you gotten Craig a belt buckle yet? I said, I don't know. Let's check with Pat. And I checked with Pat. No, we hadn't gotten you a belt buckle. So then I begged the other party to give up number 65 because I thought that was a good number for you. So I'm glad you like it, and you've certainly earned it many times over.
Well, Phil, my blessings to you and your family over the holidays. But again, I expect we'll be talking before the next 10 days. So God bless, and see you on Wednesday, normal time, chat room. Thank you for all the support. And your final comments.
Nothing except for thanks for hosting when I can't be around, and thanks for putting up with David, whatever that means. But anyway, I'm not going to do what David does. He digresses a lot, and I'm not going to digress. But I will say thank you for your time. It's been enjoyable, and I hope to do it again with you sometime before the new year.
All right. Well, take care, and good night. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
And there was no red button put up into the chat room, but I think we are going to say good afternoon to all, and thank you again. Boom.